What's going on, y'all? TruTechnoGamer here, and I just wanted to have a bit of a discussion with you guys on some things that I've been thinking about with regards to the home theater side of things. So I've talked about my channel being Journey to Endgame, and like I said, for the most part, if I did not touch my system from this point, I'm good. That's the way I would describe it. I'm good. Doesn't mean it's the absolute best of everything, of course, but it's pretty solid. And for me and my ears and my eyes, right, I'm good. Now, that said, if you're in this hobby, of course, I'm always thinking like, what else is there that I may be able to do to actually get some meaningful improvement to something, right? And, this is an interesting area because it brings up the question of, well, if you want to get meaningful improvement, especially to the audio side of things, where do you look at? Like, where do you go, right? And for me, I'm thinking mostly for music because, again, these speakers, these Paradigm Persona 7F speakers are just so lovely. And they're so revealing. They're so high resolution and transparent. They reveal everything about my system, everything along the chain there. And I have heard them. I've experienced them and heard them deliver even better quality than what I'm getting right now in my space. So for music, specifically for music, right? So I'm just thinking like, okay, well, what else is there? I've tackled power, tackled cabling, right? I have solid amp, preamps, right? I've tackled the room correction stuff, right? So what is there? And, I've thought about this. I've talked to some people, some dealers, and some forums about this, whatever. And it just brought up some interesting things that I wanted to share with you guys, right? So let's get into that. All right, so let's get at it, man. If you haven't done so already, please like, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it. Let's keep the channel growing, man, right? Show me that love. I'll give it right back. All right, so, this discussion dissolved into like, well, where do you get the most improvement and where do you get the biggest bang for your buck? Right now, in my system now, having great components as a baseline, Paradigm, Persona, per listen subs, Anthem AVM 90, Parasound JC5, these are all flagship products from very reputable brands, right, in audio, audio and video, right? So, where do I go from here? Now, with music, which requires, again, I said this before, most of what you're paying for and getting when you keep going up is to deliver the utmost in quality, realism, transparency, detail, whatever have you, for music, okay? Speakers out there that cost 6 figures, amplifiers out there cost 6 figures, preamps and processors that cost 6 figures. I mean, you're really trying to get that last word of music. And again, there is no perfect system out there. No perfect speaker, no perfect system. So we get all of that, right? So obviously, I still have room potentially to grow from music. Now, my system, as I've said, has been a hybrid system. It's been multi-purpose. I spend most of the time down here with home theater. That's the fact. Home theater meaning surround sound. So TV, streaming, Blu-ray movies, gaming, all of that is, my system is engaged in surround sound, right? For Dolby Atmos and everything else like that. And then separately is 2-channel music when I'm really listening for the highest fidelity possible, right? All of that right now is controlled via the AVM 90 from Anthem, my processor, right? That's doing all of the duties. It's my DAC, my digital analog converter. It's my processor for surround sound and home theater. And it's also my 2-channel preamp, essentially, right? When I'm doing 2-channel right now, it is the preamplifier and the DAC, right? And then it can send everything out to that Parasound JC5 amp. It does a great job. Part of the reason why I got an AVM 90 instead of an AVM 70 or even something from like Marantz is that I felt that the AVM 90, the thing that Anthem did focus on there was the upgraded circuitry, the upgraded DACs to deliver the better quality for music and 2-channel. it does a really, really good job. And it's pretty much up there, very, very close to Anthem's separate STR preamp, right? Which is made for just for 2-channel listening, but for preamp. But here's the thing, right? I have noticed that there is just a little bit of edge to the sound. There's some lushness there, but it's not like I have heard from these speakers in other systems in other places, right? And there's just a little bit more of that organic kind of lush sound that I've heard plenty of times with other systems too, for music, obviously for like, dedicated 2-channel systems with tube amps and stuff like that. We know where that can go. So I just started thinking, started wondering, like, what can I do to get there? And the first place I thought of was my amp, right? JC5 is no slouch, right? It's retails for what, like $7,000 or something like that, or maybe even $7,500 now. I think it went up, whatever, somewhere around there. It's their flagship, very reputable, John Curl design. We get all of that. It's 400 watts into 8 ohms, right? It's really robust, but it's only 600 watts into 4 ohms. And I say only because it shows that the amp doesn't quite double the wattage as the resistance gets halved, which is how it should work in an optimal circuit. So as the resistance goes lower, the wattage should go up linearly, accordingly. So 8 ohms, 400 watts, the ideal would be 800 watts into 4 ohms, but that doesn't happen with this amp. It's part of the reason why it's cost less. Once you start getting up to like 10 grand plus in the prices for amps, you start seeing that, whether it's 30 watts or 300 watts, you'll see that it actually doubles up as the resistance gets halved. So 8 ohms would be, like 100 watts, and you'll see a perfect 200 watts into 4 ohms, that kind of thing. It turns out that it actually takes a lot more design and components and higher quality stuff as well to build an amplifier that's that robust to really do that. That means that the amplifier is linear and that it has enough current to keep power flowing through the speaker no matter what the frequency is, and no matter, the speaker is going to fluctuate. It's going to be doing this all the time with its resistance, with its ohms. So the amplifier can keep it fed in a linear fashion throughout. It just basically means that the amplifier can control that speaker that much better. So what I'm saying is I understand that the JC5 isn't the last word in control, right, of a speaker. It probably wouldn't be amplifier of choice for something huge like a Focal Grand Utopia or Wilson Chronosonic or something, not even of that, but just a bigger speaker with a lot of drivers, whatever like that, that's going to require a lot of current. I get all that. And when I pose this question, a lot of people point immediately to say, well, it all starts with your room. You got to have a pretty well treated room and start with that at the base. Otherwise, anything you buy, you heard this before, is going to just be a waste of time, right? Now, you're seeing me standing in front of these panels. I did a video talking about, my journey with room treatments. I did, several consultations with the folks at GIK Acoustics, which were super awesome and super helpful. And they gave me some ideas of what I can do to get the most bang for my buck in terms of room treatments in this space. And I've done that. All right. But I still have gotten comments from people, even listening to my videos like right now, that, oh, your voice still sounds echoey, even, in that space, man. You need more room treatments. Or, they'll just say, I'll say like, hey, I already got the room treatments. I got a bunch of panels that, yeah, but, if you're saying that, your voice, people are saying your voice sound echoey, or I pointed out to folks that I still prefer the way sound comes out in this space with Anthem Arc on, right? The Arc Genesis room correction. And room correction is one of those things, especially for music, where it's like, that's digital processing, which people really frown upon with music, right? Because music is an analog, sound is analog, right? And the sound that comes from your speakers are analog waves. And the less like conversion of stuff you have to do, the better. So the idea for the purists out there is to have a pure analog chain for your music, right? At some point nowadays, because we have like digital streamers and, music coming from, the internet, whatever, it's all digital. Even CDs are digital, right? So somewhere you need to have a DAC, a digital to analog converter. But you want to have a high quality one, and basically once it gets the analog signal, it's pretty much left there. The problem is with a processor like the AVM90 in a home theater environment is that when the music gets into that, typically, in order for it to apply bass correction, which ARC does a great job of, and all of the ARC filters for the timing and phase and all that stuff, it needs to take that analog signal, reconvert it to digital so it can actually do the processing on it. All that processing is software that is done on bits, zeros and ones. So it does whatever it does to provide that processing. And in order to do that, it actually has to downsample the sound, by the way, right? So it downsamples the sound slightly, does all of the processing, and then it goes back and upsamples it and reconverts it back to analog, right? So there's a lot of conversion going in there, and purists will tell you that that's where the sound, the music sound, loses some stuff, right? Which is why you don't want to use your digital movie processor, surround sound processor, for your 2-channel analog music listening. That's what I've been hearing. Kind of makes sense, right? But, even talking to people like, okay, so should I get a 2-channel analog preamp for just a music path, and so I can bypass the AVM90? They're like, well, again, it depends on your room, right? Have you tried using the Anthem with its analog, or its digital bypass? Because the Anthem has a thing where you can basically tell it to bring in any analog signals and leave it, right? Don't do any reconversion to digital, don't do any of the processing on it, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, well, I've done that. So recently I did a comparison. And the way I can only do that now because I don't have a separate standalone DAC right now, right? Keep that in mind. So my music listening right now is from 2 possible sources. I have the Oppo 205, which is great disc player, one of the best still, robust. That's their flagship. They built it with a built-in DAC that's really high end, so it can actually do digital to analog conversion itself from CDs, from USB sources, stuff like that, which I do. And so that's one source. And the other source is my Hi-Fi Rose RS30, which is a great music streamer, but it's only the transport, meaning it doesn't have a built-in DAC. So it just takes the digital information from the internet, puts them in the best quality possible, but what comes out is still bits, it's still zeros and ones. So right now I send that directly to my Anthem, and then use the Anthem built-in DAC to do the digital to analog conversion. And that's also what I hear from my amplifier. That's what the amplifier gets, right? Anthem is great, like I said, but is it comparable to a true high-end audiophile analog, 2-channel preamp? Something that you might, get from the likes of a Past Labs or a Griffin, right? Or, companies like that, right? Most will say no, right? So I'm like, okay, right? But when I did that comparison from the Oppo, because I have the Oppo connected to my Anthem digitally and via analog, meaning I'm using the Anthem as a DAC and I'm using the Oppo as a DAC, and I can compare the two. And when I do that, I still prefer the sound with ARC on, with ARC enabled, right? The other thing that's weird here is that the Anthem allows you to turn on ARC even when you tell it to leave the analog signal alone, basically to bypass the digital conversion. But it still lets you do ARC, which is interesting. So it has to be doing something to the sound, right? So there's 2 toggles there. I can say convert analog, yes or no, meaning it will take an analog and convert it to digital, do this stuff and not. And I can say turn ARC on and off. So my preferred way of listening is with ARC still on, but the convert analog set to no, meaning it leaves the analog pure. The problem with that is that it bypasses Anthem's bass management. So I don't basically get any subs integrated that way. I would have to say don't bypass the digital in order to get my subs activated, right? So, but even with that, just in 2.0 listening, I still prefer the pure analog, but with ARC on. And when I say that to people, they're like, okay, well, that speaks to a problem with your room, right? That speaks to, it shouldn't be the case. If you have a properly treated room, theoretically, all of the art processing should be redundant, right? And it shouldn't really do anything to add a lot, especially for music. For movies, right? Because the bass management, all that stuff. But for music, you should be good, right? It should sound the same. So that got me thinking, guys, and reflecting. Like, you guys can see, I did a good amount of room treatment down here, and it has made a difference for sure. But I can't really do much more, right? I just can't. Most people don't have an optimal room for what audiophiles would say is like the perfect setup for 2-channel music, right? A nice kind of smaller, first of all, smaller space that is more enclosed, more complete walls. That's, smaller square or rectangle, ideally shape. You could put room treatments on around. Guys, I have 23 sound panels around my space. Ceiling, all around, as you see, all around. 23 panels, that's not slouch. Now, if I had this in a smaller room, if I can just take my seating area here, have this wall, have that as one wall, no stairwell there, just have that as one wall, and it's in the back wall was right where like my bar table is. If that was my space with 23 panels, I have plenty of panels I think to really dial this room perfectly in. But like a lot of you, that's not the case. I don't have an optimal 2-channel listening space. I'm using my basement, which is kind of more of a rec room, and I'm serving it as such. I'm doing multi-purpose duties down here, right? I did what I could, guys, but as you can see with this open room, there's still a lot of open space for sound to travel in. There's a lot of wall coverage that's still not quite there, and it is not going to be there. This is already a lot. I have to keep a certain aesthetic here, right? Like, like I said, this is facing my family, my kids. I got a wife. And when I have guests, I don't want it to look like this is not a studio, right? This is a home, right? And this is a rec space, So I can't go so crazy. But if you look around, I have sound panels across every wall that I could on every side, all 4 sides of the space. But it's just a big space. This is the best I can do, guys. It did make a difference. It is improved. I'm talking to you guys here, and I can hear that it's improved than what it used to be. I don't hear as much echo from my voice or whatever, but it is what it is, right? So then the question is, okay, well, if this is as far as it can go, and I'm noticing that there is a difference with arc on and off, that I still prefer arc on, am I going to get any benefit from adding anything to my system for music? Is the question, right? And I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that, right? Because, there's a lot of people I know in this situation. You're in a living room, you're in an open room, open concept, and you're, practical consideration in a home, right? You may or may not even have any room treatments. I at least have room treatments, but is it going to be perfect? No, right? Is it going to absolutely, dull the whole room out and get rid of all reflections and stuff? Of course, and especially in a room like this. Like I said, it's just so big and, still has plenty of reflective things. I got that table, I got the fridge back there, I got the pool table. I mean, right? It is what it is. And that's fine. This is what I want, right? By the way, I purposely did not even try to build a dedicated 2-channel room. I just want this room, like I said, to be kind of jack of all trades. I can watch movies, play games, have recreational time, and listen to music, and do all of that at the highest quality possible. That's my goal. Is that realistic, though? Is that even attainable? I don't know, right? Given what I'm saying about this space, you guys let me know. You tell me, what do you think? If I was to add a analog 2-channel preamp, so I bypass the AVM90 for music, and I, let's say I have a standalone DAC, I can get stuff from the RS-130, or I can just take stuff from the Oppo, pump it right into this pure analog, high quality, audiophile level amp, right? Preamp, right? Sorry. And then just pump that out to the JC5. Would I get improvement? I mean, fundamentally, right? If I'm trying to get the best quality possible for 2-channel, can I use or should I use my home theater processor for that? Granted, the AVM90 is among the best, but it's still a home theater processor, right? So it still has a lot of video circuitry and HDMI stuff in there and DSP processors in there. And even with the analog, pure mode on, the signal still has to go through all of that stuff, right? Where the whole purpose of having these standalone preamps is to keep the analog signal pretty much untouched, right? In addition to having better volume control, more accurate volume control, and then keeping the impedance balance on the inputs and outputs, right? That's what a preamp essentially does. Now, that increases the sound quality. I haven't really had a chance to test that in detail yet, but I'm just curious of what you guys think. So let me know, right? Let me know what your thoughts are here on this. Like, some people say, look, you got a hell of a system, man, for what you're trying to do. You're not going to hear anything if you added a preamp or even changed out your amp or whatever. Just, you're basically limited to whatever you get from your room. That's one side of it. The other side of it is, with speakers like that, and if you really are someone that cares about like high quality, hi-fi, 2-channel listening, you need a preamp, guy. You definitely need a preamp, right? And your system and your speakers can handle it. You're going to hear a huge difference with that, right? Those are the two sides of the camp, right? I just don't know which one is true yet. Of course, I would love to hear it for myself. I'm going to try to do some shopping and some demoing myself to see, if a preamp, an analog preamp will make a difference. I don't know. But I am also curious to hear what you guys think. So hit me up. Let me know in the comments. I will see you there. But until next time, TruTechnoGamer, signing off.